everybody. Welcome back to the Let's Talk podcast with me, John, and David, aka Shamrock Balls. And we're just going to be continuing in the month of Emilio Estevez September, because we're up to 1987's Stakeout, a buddy cop comedy that stars Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss. And this is a favorite of my buddy David here. So why don't you start this one off?
Yeah, I didn't know whether or not to grow a moustache for this episode, John.
Because a lot of mustaches in this movie.
It's a lot of mustaches, yeah. For many years, this was my favorite buddy cop movie. So it is until I'd seen Lethal Weapon. Now, it's been a few years since I'd seen Stakeout, and I actually watched it last night for the first time in about 4 or 5 years. And you know what? See, after seeing this movie again, I have it neck and neck with Lethal Weapon. I absolutely adore this film.
You see, I actually removed Lethal Weapon from it because Lethal Weapon is a buddy movie and it's a buddy cop movie, but this is more of a buddy cop comedy movie where there's a lot more drama on Lethal Weapon. So I kind of I put this more in line with Beverly Hills Cop or Running Scared from the 1980s.
Yeah, and I feel as if this is one of these movies that actually was probably born off the back of Beverly Hills Cop. Even though we talked about it in Beverly Hills Cop episode, excuse me, that it wasn't really a buddy cop movie because it was Eddie Murphy doing his thing, and then you had the two cops were a sidekick who bounced off each other like an old married couple, and they said at that particular time that Beverly Hills Cop had created this kind of new subgenre of a thriller or a cop thriller with a comedy element, and this is what this very much feels like. It feels like they take the two cops in Beverly Hills Cop who were the old married couple, and they put them in this movie, and they're doing a stakeout, and it's Emilio Estevez and Richard Dreyfuss, who are two of my favorite actors of all time.
Yeah, I figured that's why you'd love this movie. And watching the movie, I told you last time when we talked about Young Guns and Emilio Estevez, which one thing I wanted to bring up just off the top because we talked about it is how this came out a year before Young Guns, and Emilio Estevez, his age, I looked it up. He's 25 in this movie and 26 years old in Young Guns. And in Young Guns, he's never 21 years old. So, and looking at his face, they definitely found a way to make him look younger, whether it be through effects or clothing or anything like that, because he just looks so much more adult in this movie.
Yeah, and do you know what? There was a stage in the movie where they were discussing JFK's assassination.
Yeah.
And Richard Dreyfuss says to Emilio Estevez, "Why do you even care about this? You were 5 years old." So I started thinking, or did he say 6 years old? It was one or the other. So I started actually thinking about, what age was he supposedly born then? And I then worked out that he was 30 years of age. And then later in the movie, he mentions to him about, I made detective before I was 30. So I didn't actually look at Emilio Estevez's age, but what I did do was work out what age was the character supposed to be. And I suppose having the moustache does make him look a bit older. But at the same time as well, I also think that it's a kind of in-joke between him and Dreyfuss, or maybe the filmmakers, that these are 1980s cops, and that's why they have to have these mustaches. But at the same time, Estevez got the air pass for his son.
Yeah, I mean, in real life, they're 15 years apart. And I was thinking about this yesterday because me and you were about 10 years apart. And they're just getting on Richard Dreyfuss for being an old man. And he's 40 years old in real life at the time of this movie. And I'm just thinking, poor David's got to hear them talking about a 40-year-old man being washed up and late in his career.
Yeah. I didn't even cross my mind what age Dreyfuss was in this film. Yeah, Dreyfuss being 40 years of age, I didn't even think about what age he was supposed to be in this film. So thanks for putting that in perspective for me. But I think we had mentioned it before, funny enough, about in one of the earlier podcasts we've done about when you're younger and you see older people, older than you, they seem so much older. But when you get to their age, they don't seem so much older. And then when you surpass their age, they actually start to look younger. It's a very strange thing. And to me, even though Dreyfuss to be in this, I think what makes him look older in the movie is the balding head and the grey hair and the grey moustache. I mean, I still think when you look at him, I mean, he's very kind of smooth skinned as well. So I think that's what makes him look much older, but I don't think that he aged gracefully. I mean, I think Dreyfuss always kind of looked older than what he was. I mean, even in Jaws, I think he was only 26 and he looks a hell of a lot older.
Yeah, I always thought of Richard Dreyfuss as an older guy, but even between, I mean, obviously it's a lot of years, but he looks like a totally different person than he does in Jaws compared to this. He's got a lot. He also looks a little bit thinner in this movie, but he still has that energy. And for me, honestly, right out of the gate, he was the best part of the movie for me. I loved Richard Dreyfuss in this movie.
Yeah, he is so good. I mean, I've said it before. I believe Richard Dreyfuss was one of the best actors of his generation. I've said it the last episode that you know um, it's bittersweet for me because I love Richard Dreyfuss as an actor. I love a lot of the early movies he's done, and I feel as if he could have done a lot more in his later career, but unfortunately, it didn't happen for him. Um, and you're right. I think he is the best thing about this film, and I didn't realize it until I was watching it again last night. Always knew he was good in it, but just I didn't realize how good he was. He's such a great comedic actor as well as a serious dramatic actor, and he fuses them together in this film.
Yeah, he really does. I always forget how funny he is. That's the thing. Like I've seen him do
Yeah,
dramatic plenty of times, but I always forget that this guy really can actually do the comedy. And him and Emilio Estevez, have great chemistry, which is always the key to a good buddy comedy. Is the two guys got to have good chemistry. But I actually even enjoyed the relationship that the two of them had. Basically with the other shift guys, the other shift detectives that they
yeah.
started off with. Because I'm sure you've had it where you've had jobs like that where you're just messing around with other guys.
Yeah, exactly. And they're always trying to get one up on the other person as well, which is very funny. You're just waiting for that next thing, and I love how when Emilio is it Emilio Estevez puts the cat in the back of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then he's got the dog.
he's got the dog in the back, but Richard Dreyfuss is late pulling up to the house, and when Dreyfuss is just standing watching, and he goes into the house, and he says to Emilio Estevez, "You keep me young." Because he goes to get them and he goes, you keep me young. And he says, I've got to go and change the recorder. The recorder's broken. And Dreyfuss says to him, how long will you be? And he says, I'll be about an hour. And he goes, okay, I'll just stay here. And he looks, and the picture of the girl, Maria, is on the wall, and they have drew a pair of breasts onto the picture. And Dreyfuss looks at it, and the first thing he says is, they're such children.
Yeah, that's where he feels that way after all the stuff he's been doing.
After everything they've been doing, he said, if you keep me young, he says something. I think he says they're so immature. Actually, he says they're so immature.
Meanwhile, after everything he's doing in this movie, just basically trying to self-sabotage himself.
Yeah, and that to me is like the best thing in this movie is I think it is a very funny film. But I think the best thing about it is the relationship between him and Estevez and how they do bounce off each other. I also like his relationship with Maria as well. And how that love story develops. So she comes across as a bit desperate, but it's just obviously a plot device to get the story moving forward.
Yeah, that's all that really is. But yeah, you brought it up earlier that they feel like an old married couple, and that is kind of like what their relationship is. Early in the movie, you see it, even though they spend the entire night together, and clearly, I mean, I guess he's divorced or getting divorced now, and Emilio Estevez is married, but they'd rather talk to each other on the phone on their limited off time that they have, like a married couple would do, instead of actually being there with their own wives.
Yeah, exactly. And there's times, and I know it's played for jokes, but it's almost like, and I know this isn't the case. It's almost like if Estevez is getting jealous that he is going off with this woman, and that kind of back and forward banter that they have is almost like he's cheating on him.
It makes it feel like that's what's going on because, like, he's getting jealous that he's always across the street, like, and he's over there by himself because it's not like 2024 stakeouts, I imagine. They got to entertain each other. Like,
Yeah, and at first it's kind of like they don't want to do this takeout, and I love that, but that first kind of I think semi-serious scene with Dreyfuss saying to the FBI, I'm a cop, and if I see a bad guy, I take a bad guy out. They don't really want to be there, so they are having to entertain each other when they're there. And I'm watching this again last night. I was sitting thinking, I don't know, it's the 80s and things were different then, but I'm like, Dreyfuss is coming across as a very pervy, you know.
yeah, oh, he comes off like, I mean, the whole thing, and I think Emilio even says it. He's like, he's like, stop letting your I don't know if he says what he says, but basically stop letting you're being led by a hard on at this point. Like, and he's like, I gotta get my hetero out. So he's just basically horny and he's being a horn dog, just trying to go over there. But he's not caring about her.
Yeah, that's right. And of course that I love that opening scene with them when they're in the diner and Dreyfuss is eating and you see Estevez like criticizing him, and then when they go after the bad guy, I love that whole chase at the start. Just absolute two clowns, and I like when Dreyfuss actually catches the bad guy with the red hair, and he says to him, "You have the right." He says, "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say will be taken down." And then he grabs him by the throat, and he just says to him, "Jesus Christ!" And then
initially you can just see how they might be good cops, but they're a little bit stupid.
Yeah, he just doesn't realize how strong he is, and then of course when he goes into the through the fish, and Estevez comes out in the forklift and gets in his way, and the guy gets away, but then he ends up in the water in the off the pier. But yeah, so that kind of sets the tone. And when they go back to the police station, I love how when the FBI man comes in and Dreyfuss shakes his hand, and you see him sniffing his hand afterwards.
Yeah, like what the hell? Why do you smell that? Which is funny how they split that up. Like, no, I just picked up the bill. You're doing the fish, and he's like, "Fuck, I got to do that."
He's hit this part of the job, So yeah, so that just sets the tone for them two guys. But something I wanted to touch on, and it's kind of we talked about this before, John, on other podcasts we've done, and I didn't. Again, this is something that I've seen this movie. I don't know how many times, 20 times maybe over the years since I was a kid. I remember watching it on television when I was a young kid, and it was always edited out. And I was always fascinated with this movie because it was Richard Dreyfuss, the man from Jaws, Hooper from Jaws. And then later on, when I got it on DVD, I became a fan of this film for real. I never realized this till I was watching it last night. And Estevez says it to him as well in one of the best scenes in the movie, which is a more dramatic scene. And it's after they have the tape of Bill coughing down the phone. And it's
hysterical, by the way, how he realizes that he just starts coughing and he's like, "What?" He realizes that she's being tapped, and he's like,
"Sorry, can't talk now." But he's so stupid because he gives her his home number, knowing that if she phones anybody, it's going to record.
Yeah. And he forgot. That's what he did the night before.
he forgot, and then of course, and then to see the video of him, which. For me, this is the funniest scene in the movie. For me, is when he spends the night with Maria, and he wakes the next morning, and he says, first of all, she start getting it on again in the morning, and then again he remembers where he is, kind of realizes, and rolls around and says, "What time is it?" And she says 7:30, and he's like, "Jesus Christ!"
7:30.
Jesus Christ! And she's like, "What's wrong? You late for work?" And he says, yeah. She says, "Why can't you just phone in and tell him you're late?" And he says, "No." He says, can't remember what he says, but he opens the door to the bedroom because there's windows. He jumps, so he misses the windows and starts putting his clothes on and says, "Have you got a hat? I've got this skin condition," and she brings out this big pink hat, and he puts it on. And that, to me, that's one of the funniest scenes when he leaves the house and he goes down the steps and he turns and he goes and he hides behind the pillar, and there's this whole police chase, which I don't understand why there's this whole big police chase, because they said if you see anybody, let the FBI know. So I don't know how that ended up a big police chase, but it turns into this sad piece, and it's a comedic part. And so they're back in the police station and they're talking about, oh, we've seen somebody leave the house, and this is his voice, and you see Estevez just looking at him because he gave her his name, Bill, and and then this says, "And we also retrieved this from the chase, and the hat, it's all torn up like the dog had ate it." But there's the scene after that, which is a dramatic scene where Estevez says to him, as I mentioned earlier, don't you be messing this up on me. Don't you be fucking this up on me. I busted my chops to make detective for under 30. Have you got it? And he's like, "Yeah, I got it." They didn't make a joke out of it. They made it a serious scene. And he says to him, what the hell happened to you, man? You used to be a hell of a cop. So that's the point I want to get to, and to touch on it a few times in this movie, but they never ever address it fully or directly or on the nose. And that's what I like about older movies. Is Dreyfuss an ex-alcoholic? His character?
But yeah, with Richard Dreyfuss's character, he definitely perceives to be somebody who's kind of made some mistakes in his life, and also how, like, his wife did leave him, but it's kind of like, oh, he can't really do nothing about it now. But what did he do to get to that
Mm.
point? Is he like just, is it the job? Is he more committed to his job? Which he does seem to be more committed to his job than anything else in Emilio Estevez. Or does he just
Mm.
not like, or is he a drunk? It's very possible.
Because it wasn't something that I kind of really thought about until I watched it again last night, and it was kind of like you say, he seems to be a wee bit on the edge, you know. I like he's got the moustache. There's scenes in the movie where he isn't shaved, you know. And okay, you could put that down to the fact that his wife left him, but the thing was that when has he got any friends? I mean, is his only friend Emilio Estevez? Because when she leaves, I don't know, it could be just because of the movie. We're not going to go off into this whole kind of subplot about with his friends or his family or whatever. It's not that type of film. It's a very, very small cast. It's very contained within the house mainly. But the first person he phones, or the only that we see phones, is his work colleague, is his partner, and he says to him about he knows he's sitting staring at the bottle of, I think it looks like wine, but I don't know what it is. And
Oh,
yes, the
that's
face,
whiskey.
what is it? Sorry.
That's whiskey.
Oh, it was whiskey, right? He actually says to him, yeah, I don't even think Dreyfuss says to him, "Oh, I'm looking at a bottle, or I'm going to take a drink." He just says to him, "Have you popped the cap yet?" And he says, "No," and he says, "Put it down then." And then there was later on when he's having the meal with Maria, she mentions to him, "I think I've had a few bit much to drink," and he's drinking water. Now you could put that down to the fact he's on duty, but later on, when the man comes to Maria's house looking for his wife and he's drunk, Dreyfuss comes in and says to him, "You've had too much to drink, pal." And he gives him this kind of speech as if he understands. So he could maybe see himself in that man. Maybe that's how he's behaved with his wife.
Ah, that's a good way to look at that, because I did think he was a little bit more forgiving towards that guy.
Yeah, yeah. Look, he's a cop. I mean, Maria didn't know he was a cop at that stage. I mean, he could have. We've seen him handy with his hands. I mean, it's a movie at the end of the day. Richard Dreyfuss is very small, but let's say he could have went in and restrained the guy, called his friends, his cop friends, got him to, but he didn't. He decided to reason with the guy and talk with him and said to him, you know, had a few drinks, and he says, "How about some coffee?" He calmed him down and diffused the situation. But of course, that then kind of turns Maria on more to him rather
Yeah.
than calling the cops or being violent, which her previous boyfriend is violent. So that's an attraction that she sees in Richard Dreyfuss's character, other than being very hands on. But it was just very interesting once again last night. That's what I love about older movies, John. I mean, if this movie was made today, they would probably make a big deal about him being an ex-alcoholic, or they'd probably have a scene of him getting drunk again and doing something stupid. And they didn't have to do that in this movie. And he even says there, he says there as well, "I'm not that much of a good guy, nice guy," because she says, you're nice. But of course, she doesn't know that he's a cop and that's why he's doing these things. But at the same time, when he says, "I'm nice," we're assuming it's because he's telling her a lie, but maybe not.
No, I actually take that as him being a nice guy, because he does seem like a nice guy. People
Mhm.
do seem to like him. He's been a cop for a long time. He's obviously good at his job, but he probably has, like you said, that one fatal flaw that he is aware of, because when he doesn't pop it, he's like, "All right, Dad." When he doesn't take the bottle and drink it, he does put it down. So he does know that he must have some problems that he has to take care of at all times. And I just think that leads perfectly into his entire arc of the movie, because why does he attach himself so fast to her? It does feel, and she attaches herself pretty damn quick to him.
Hmm. Yeah, and just speaking of Richard Dreyfuss's height, and he's the same height as Emilio Estevez. It's a funny line when they're reading her profile, and they read out to say 5'6", and they both look at each other and go, "Too tall." And then they said about her being 313 pounds, which I must be a typo, because when she cuts out of the car, they turn around and they said she must have been on a diet. There's no way that woman was ever 313 pounds.
No, probably had to be like 113 pounds, because there's just no way. She's very thin. And
Yeah.
That actress, she's pretty good. I'm drawing a blank on her name, but I've seen her in other things like 12 Monkeys. She's really good in.
Okay, I haven't seen 12 Buggy, so I haven't seen her really in anything else. And um, look, I love what Dreyfuss says. You know, that's disgusting. She could be the house.
Oh, the jokes are just in the one-liners are just so good in this movie.
That's
And again,
so good.
I think Dreyfuss actually had the better of him. I mean, Emilio
Yeah,
was great, but Dreyfuss just had me dying in this movie.
yeah. But that's when he goes to phone his wife, and I love when they turn around and he says, "I need to phone her." That's when Emilio Estevez comes off the phone to his family. He says, "I need to phone her," and Estevez says she's probably in bed with some other guy, and they look at each other, and they both say at the same time, "Poor bastard." And that's another funny bit as well. One bit as well is when he is back at his house and he phones Estevez and he says, "Are you sleeping?" And he says, "Well, what else would you be doing?" And he says, "About she's left me." And he's like, he says, "Well, why didn't you just go back? There's nothing you can do. Go back to sleep." And he says, "I would, but just took
Blinds.
the blinds." Yeah, he didn't say blinds or drapes or whatever curtains. He didn't say that word, but she's taking the curtains. I just thought that was so funny. Um, but yeah, what is the attraction? I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, there's a love story thrown into this movie, and to me, that's the anchor really of the movie is the love story. You know, it's not even so much the relationship between him and Estevez because watching this again last night, John, I thought that Estevez to me was more of a supporting player
Hmm.
rather than a main player in the movie. But it's basically Dreyfuss's film, and the anchor is the love story. The only thing I can think about the reason that she falls for him so quickly is because she's been treated so badly. You know, her life really isn't going anywhere. She has a brother that's, is going to prison. She mentions her mother. I can't remember what she says about her mum. And then this drunk guy coming into her house looking for a friend. So she's got a lot of problems in her life. And then this guy comes along who's fixing problems for her. And I think she falls for him very quickly and hard. Whereas you could say that she's on the rebound, possibly, but is Dreyfuss on the rebound? You know, that whole thing about his wife, she's probably in bed with somebody else. That tells me that him and Estevez have a close relationship. He's confided in Estevez about his personal relationship. And basically, for them as to both even joke to each other, poor bastard, then he knows that maybe Dreyfuss's relationship with his wife isn't rosy, and maybe it was already over, and she just took the step to go. Was he really that heartbroken that she left? And then he sees this other woman. So yeah, that's what I think about just the relationship there. But it is just to me the anchor of the movie, and it's nice that they give us a bit of backstory rather than just have Dreyfuss be this single cop or have a one line threw away that I used to be married or she died or you know what I mean or she left me and took my kids or do you know what I mean? It's nice to have that wee bit of character building
Yeah.
for all the characters, even Estefis, they didn't have to put that scene with him with a wife and a child in the movie. That kind of limited depth, the buddy cop comedy. They could have just had Estefis as a single man living on his own. I mean, but they give us that bit of depth. But I think it's interesting as well, John, what you said about it's good to see the contrast of him as a young cop, up and coming cop with the wife, with the kid, and Dreyfus as an established cop who maybe has lost his edge, lost his ways, and then is losing his personal life too.
You could look at it as the sense that Emilio Estevez, and he says it, is a younger version of him. Like, now you have the family, but you couldn't easily, if they're 10 years apart in the movie, you say, in 10 years, if you don't, stay on the straight and narrow, keep doing what I'm doing, you could end up just like me in this position where your wife is leaving you because you're more committed to the job. Maybe you're more committed to the bottle than you are actually committed to your own actual family. But again,
Yeah.
it's not front and center in the movie. It's actually like in the background. And like you said, like, they don't have to do that, but they do. And I think where this movie being 2 hours compared to like a usual 90-minute comedy, you could flesh that stuff out more.
Do you know what? I was actually very surprised when I put it on last night because I thought it was about 90 minutes and I couldn't believe it was near 2 hours. And it flies by. It never feels like it's too long. I think it's well paced. But like you say, there's an awful lot in there. And I like that. And by the time we get to the finale, the film is nearly over when we get to the finale. And I really do like that finale because I did listen to Siskel and Ebert earlier, and they said that the end became like an action set piece from many 80s scripts of action movies, probably over the years. But no, I just like. I get what they're saying because it's look, we're still in the 80s, so we still have that vibe. But what
You
I do like
expect
is
that to come, don't you, though? Like, I mean, I expected that to come. You just expect them to end on that kind of a set piece. It's like going to a Marvel movie and not expecting a big third act action set piece as well. It's gonna happen.
yes, and even though and what I like about look, I've said it before in podcasts we've done, I don't watch too many modern movies, but one thing I do love about 80s movies is that at the end when you face the villain, most of the time it's in a certain setting. It's in a memorable setting, and I like this setting. It's so very memorable to me, but it almost comes across like a video game or something where they're dodging.
I mean, with the log thing,
The-
it gets a little bit much where it's like, okay, do these cops do it? And I mean, in general, with this kind of movie, it's called Stakeout. They're on a stakeout. You said it earlier, like
yes,
that's just supposed to call the FBI. That's what would happen in real life. These cops are not going to go risk their lives for this kind of stuff. They're going to just watch it. If they see something out of the ordinary, they're in real life, they're going to call up who they're supposed to call up. They're not going to go on a big giant chase. But this is still a 1980s movie. There's a
yes.
couple of chases in this movie, and I enjoyed them all. They were really entertaining.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. But I suppose like I did enjoy the ending. I love the atmosphere of it. I love the setting of it, and I love how it was executed because apart from it being in a log plant or whatever you want to call it, or a log factory where they're chopping up big logs, big trees, um, it, it's not any of the action to me isn't over the top. There's no over the top fighting scenes. They're all very realistic. The shootouts to me are very realistic. There's nobody getting shot 4 or 5 times and they're still running about alive. Even when Dreyfuss shoots the bad guy, Aidan Quinn, at the end, he only shoots him once through the heart and it's over. He dies. You know what I mean? In we've seen action movies where people are shot 2 or 3 times and they're still bloody going. And I like that kind of realism that's tied into this film as well. But you're saying about the action sequences, yeah, and there was an action sequence that I forgot about in the middle of the movie. Is when the cops are chasing Aidan Quinn. Now the thing about him, his character, and don't get me wrong, I love this movie. It is essentially an 80s movie, and we've seen worse, we've seen more over the top. But you'd think that if you just broke out of prison, you'd keep a low profile.
No, the guy's an idiot. I mean, him, his cousin, they're morons.
Yeah, and when it got to that bit where the cops were chasing them and they were shooting at the cops with a shotgun, and I was sitting watching it last night, I say, because I forgot about that scene, and I thought to myself, why is this in the movie? And I was going, this feels like it's only in because we need a bit of action, you know? And then
I think they put it in the movie because if you notice, there's long gaps without him in the movie, and he's supposed to be the main antagonist. I felt like they had to put another scene of him in the movie because realistically, you don't need his character in the movie other than for us to get him to talk to her and then have that whole storyline going on. But they set it up with an opening scene that goes on for like 6 or 7 minutes of seeing the prison escape, and then we don't see him for a long time. We just know he's out there running around, so we just kind of had to see what he was up to.
yeah, and it wasn't until the end of that scene with the chase with the cops is that I remembered when they went into the river. I went, oh yes, they think he's dead, and that then leads into them having to wind down the stakeout, and then him deciding for better or worse. I was sitting thinking, I'm surprised that Estevez said, "Oh, you're going to go and tell her," because you could still get in trouble for that. But he decides to go and tell her, and then that's where, because they think he's dead, and then that's so tying into the end, which I totally agree with you about. The cops probably wouldn't get involved in that much in things, but it's kind of good in this movie the way they kind of fall into it. Because once he walks in that house and puts a gun to Aidan Quinn puts a gun to his face, it's a case of, what I tell him. And I really feel that tension because he's about to say, I couldn't tell you I was a cop. And he said, and he stops him. He says, I couldn't tell you. And he says, couldn't tell what? Couldn't tell what? And I love that. But when Emilio Estevez sees through the window, sees him, and he tries to go in to rescue Richard Dreyfuss and Maria, and Dreyfuss knocks him out. And they bring him into the house. And when he wakes up, he goes to say something, and Dreyfuss grabs him and says, "Shut up, pig!"
Yeah, because he knows what's about to happen. So he has to, again, like with the phone call, he's got to intervene fast. And he's like, I'm going to make it as obnoxious as possible so it doesn't get questioned.
Yeah, and I actually love that. So they kind of fall, and that way he brings them to the pier because that's his getaway, his escape. I think he says he's going to Canada, and he's going to shoot them. He's going to kill them. He doesn't care if Estevez is a cop. He doesn't care if Dreyfuss says he's a bank robber and he's violated his parole. He's going to shoot them so he does, so he can get away clean into Canada. Everybody else thinks he's dead anyway. Well, the cops anyway, and take Maria with him. So they kind of fell into that. But you mentioned there, you touched on the opening scene. I actually remember seeing this on TV, and to be honest, I might have actually had it on VHS before I got the DVD, and I missed the start of it. And I always thought it started with Dreyfuss and Estevez on the pier with the fish. And when I got this in DVD, I was actually surprised. I always forget, even last night when I went to put it on, I totally forgot that opening with him escaping from the prison and how long it goes on for.
Yeah, it's very detailed. I mean, they spend a lot of time, like stuff like that. This would be streamlined in 2024. Like they show the
Yeah.
van going in, they show the van going out. They build some tension. Like, is he going to get caught? Even though we know exactly what's going to happen, they do a pretty good job. And the score for this in the opening is
Yeah.
very good. I enjoy that as well. The score in general throughout the entire movie, might not hit like A+ status, but it's a solid score.
Yeah, it really is. And and you just saying there about the way they spend the time, I almost feel like they don't make movies like this anymore to give us that kind of slow build up, the suspense. And even when Aidan Quinn, I can't remember his character's name at the minute, but he actually starts the fight in the prison, the fake fight, to get out to be brought to the medical room, and how he actually attacks the doctor. Although I did notice the truncheon bending like a big black dildo when he took it out of his
I know.
took it out of his side there, and but he gives him a beating. I mean, and you see the aftermath of it. But you see him going to press the buzzer, and before he can press it, and they're at the gates, he just goes unconscious. But I have to laugh as well. It popped into my mind when Aidan Quinn was supposed to actually get in the back of the truck. He decides to slide under and hold underneath the truck, and it reminded me of a cross between Indiana Jones and the Terminator.
It did remind me of Indiana Jones, especially with Harrison Ford underneath the truck. I'm like, that's the only time I can really. Oh, Terminator does it too, but like the amount of time they spend with him getting up in there, it goes on.
Yeah, but I enjoyed that. I wouldn't have. I didn't feel critical of it. I mean, it starts. It's like it goes back to what I said at the start of the pod there, John, about the fact of turning these kind of old 1970s cop or crime thrillers into crime drama comedies or crime comedies, and that's showing you the crime drama side of it. And and the thing about Aidan Quinn as well is the 1980s, and I just like how villains were just black and white. There was no redeeming qualities in this guy whatsoever. He was just a bad guy, and that was it. There was no human side to him whatsoever, just a scumbag.
Yeah, it makes you question why she was with him, because he never seems like he was good to her at all. Like he was planning this, he put her in her couch and everything, put her in harm's way. So he never seems like a redeemable character. His character pops up in a dream sequence that I love. I love
Oh,
that.
did you like that?
I love the cinematography, so I must
Yeah.
love that kind of stuff, like the smoke rolling in, then the blue and
Yeah.
red lights coming from the outside with that haze. Again, all stuff they'll do today in CGI, but it's simple, and it does feel like a dream sequence, like feels like a nightmare.
What I like is when he comes in and puts the gun to Dreyfuss's head. She's awake and she smiles.
Yeah, like the first time. I mean, I don't remember the first time you saw that, but you would actually be a little confused. Like you wouldn't realize it's a dream sequence, other than that haze and the smoke. You're like, what the hell's going? How's he gonna get out of this? And then he wakes up. You're like, okay, I get that.
Yeah. And it's 7:30, and he's Jesus Christ. But I agree. Yeah, that's the real nightmare. Yeah, and that's the thing as well, as that I'm saying about even the end and set piece. I love that whole atmosphere at the end of them and down at the dock and stuff like that. But I had to laugh as well, and I was watching it last night. I thought to myself, when Aidan Quinn escapes from the prison and he has that big beard, and when he shaves it off, he looks like a cross between Rocky Balboa and Bono.
That is the perfect way to describe it.
Bono Balboa.
Bono Balboa. Hey!
Hey yo, hey, hey yo, the Edge. But he looks a young Ian Quinn. He put me in mind of Peter Green.
Peter Green, another great character actor that had like a small window of just great. I looked up Aiden Quinn. He's been in over 100 movies.
Has he?
Yeah, it's crazy how many credits the guy has. Because I mean, he's like just one of those good, that guys like that you just see all the time. And Peter Green's another one of those guys from like '93 to like I want to say like 2000. Peter Green would just always pop up in small roles.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, obviously, his two most famous is Pulp Fiction and The Mask. Came out in the exact same year, and you think to yourself, I mean, if you were him, you'd be thinking, Jesus, I'm really on the map here. But I've seen him do a few bit parts here and there. Aidan Quinn, I always remember Aidan Quinn from Michael Collins. He played, what was Michael Collins' Red Hot Man called? I can't remember now. I haven't watched that film in a while. And didn't he pop up in The Sopranos?
I believe he had a small role in The Sopranos, if I remember correctly. Which
He's a Sorry, go ahead.
He was a detective, right? Is that what you were going to say? But yeah, that was what, like 14 years, 15 years later.
Yeah, it's true. I was going to say he was a decorator. He was decorating Tony's house, and then him and Carmilla had a bit of a thing. And then when he found out she was married to Tony, he backed off. Do you remember?
Well, yeah, now I remember that. Yeah. Okay, you're right. I forgot about that.
I think was she not separated at the time from Tony?
They did separate. Was it that season? Well, that was like what, season 4 or 5 when they separated for a little while?
Yeah, was it the end of 4? I don't know if I think at the end of 4, yes, that's right. The end of 4 they split up, didn't it? I can't remember. It's been a while, but I always remember him being in it. And I remember him decorating the house, and then she kind of threw out the signals, and then they kissed, but then when he found out who she was, he backs off.
Yeah, I'd back off too.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not messing around with that.
No.
Nothing is worth what he's going to do.
No, definitely not. Big T.
Big T.
What up, T? Yeah, brilliant show.
Oh, yeah. Monday we'll have to do like a discussion on that.
Oh, I would love to do that, mate. I know we do the movies every couple of weeks, but like I'd love to do one on just like the show. Do you know what I mean? It's not every episode or something. Do you know what I mean? Or every series or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
so good.
I've rewatched the show a few times. I mean, I used to have the picture behind me. It's one of the best shows ever. Yeah,
I totally agree. Look, you know what? I've seen the show about 3 or 4 times, and it's like I'm due another rewatch.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it again soon. Like I watched it. I want to say during the pandemic, I was listening to the podcast with Michael Imperioli and what's his name, and then I was watching the show at the same time, like kind of doing that. But I haven't watched it since, so that's like almost 4 years. Yeah, the last time I watched it. Last time I watched it was when I moved house, like 3 years. Well, say the last time I watched it. Last time I watched the full series was like 3.5 years ago. And then at the start of the year, I started watching it again, and I watched the first series and watched the first 4 episodes of the second series, and I have my back date, so I've been meaning to go back to it. But it's so good. It's so rewatchable. I mean, there's many good shows out there, but I just think that there's very few that are rewatchable, and I think that The Sopranos is definitely one of those ones you can watch again and again. Oh, 100%. And honestly, I don't know if you saw it, but on HBO they just came out with a new David Chase documentary that probably will put us in the mood to watch the show again. I seen the trailer, but I don't have HBO. I don't even know if we get HBO over here, but I'm not sure where it's on. But when I get a chance, I'll definitely be giving it a watch. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That is true. I wonder what streaming service they would have out there for you guys. It's bound to be on something. It's bound to be on something like Paramount, or I think that I see Paramount or something like that. It's bound to be on one of them. I must check and see. Where it actually is, because I might actually have access to it. I just haven't realized, unless it's being released at a later date or something. I always forget that there's certain region things that have a difference. Like, I mean, I know you're not a wrestling fan, but WWE Network is still available for you guys. But over here in the United States, it got roped in the Peacock. Ah, right. Okay. Yeah. So we got kind of screwed on that end. Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah. Because now we're forced to have Peacock. You have to get Peacock if you want to watch it. Yeah, and I still like wrestling, so I had to get Peacock.
Well, that's not. I don't think I would specifically subscribe to any streaming services for a certain thing. Do you know what I mean? I mean, I have Amazon Prime, and if it's on it, it's on it. If it's not, it's not. I used to have Netflix, don't have it anymore. And I'm anticipating Stranger Things, the next series. But I'll find a way to watch it. I don't know, but we'll see. But see when the time comes.
Yeah, there's too many streaming services. You have to cut ties with some of them. Luckily, there's still ways like you can have family members have one, you have another, and you guys all share. But even though they're trying to crack down on that, it's like, we're not rich.
Yeah, exactly. And I have Prime for other reasons. Having I have it because I would order off Amazon, and you get the free delivery. But the fact that they have movies and shows, and I've seen they've actually started to show the Champions League as well. They're showing the Liverpool match tonight, which is a good thing. So, and there's sometimes they show the English Premier League football throughout the season. They show a couple of games. So it's there, but I wouldn't specifically get it for that.
Yeah, 100%. Now, we did get a little off topic, but this is another good reason. They didn't have streaming services in the 1980s, so when you were on a stakeout, you had to just hang out with each other.
Yeah, and do you know what? I think it's so funny, and this is something that always stuck with me at the very beginning when Dreyfuss and Estevez, they're killing time, and he's giving them quotes out of movies, and and he says to him, "This is not a boating accident." And Dreyfuss says, "No, don't know that one."
Don't know that. I knew you were gonna love that joke.
Yeah, that is one that always stuck me since I was a young kid when I watched this movie, because I was right away. I was like, "Oh, that's sort of Jaws," and it's so funny that he's saying it to Richard Dreyfuss, and Richard Dreyfuss's reaction is like, "Oh, don't know that one," and but the funny thing is, Richard Dreyfuss seems to have this fascination with U.S. presidents.
Yeah, he keeps asking him a question about presidents. That's always what he brings up.
And I like what he says, "Who's the 16th president of the United States?" And Estevez is like, "I don't know." And he's reading Playboy, and he says, "I'll give you a clue." And he turns to Playboy, and he's like,
"Abe Lincoln." Picture was.
What do I think it was? Do you want me to say?
I mean, I'm wondering if we thought it was the same thing.
Well, I mean, if he's got Playboy, and the 16th president of the United States was Abraham Lincoln, and it's the 1980s, I think I can guess what he's looking at there.
I think that we're thinking the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Dead giveaway. He's like, "Oh, Abe Lincoln."
Abe Lincoln. Let's put it like this: he had a very bushy black beard.
Oh yes, she did. Okay, we did think the same thing.
Yeah.
I know the 16th president if you live in the United States. Like, I think every American can name 3. And I think one of them is Lincoln.
I was trying to think, who is that? I was actually trying to think myself before you give the answer. Now, to be honest, with a bit of trivia about me, I could tell you every US president back to the Second World War, but that's about as far as I can go.
That I'm an American, and that's about as far as I can go. Then there's like a few sprinkled. There's a few sprinkled in there, like I can tell you when like Theodore Roosevelt, and there's a couple other ones like I did like the first
Jefferson, Washington,
Adams, like the ones in the early years that
Adams.
Everyone did book reports on. But then like even in this movie, like, who was the 15th president? I'm like, I don't fucking know who the 15th president was.
I'd see what you think about it too. This is the 80s, John. So it was Reagan was the president. So let me see. So let me think. So you had Bush Senior, Clinton, Bush Junior, Obama, Trump, Biden. Right. So there's 6. So by 1987, there was only 40 what? 40 presidents, right? Up to that point. Yeah. So to go back 15, it's not like you're only going back 25.
Yeah, and I imagine like back then, you probably took tests on it and everything like that. Because I mean, they never gave us a test when I was growing up on the presidents.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated by all that stuff. So that's the only reason that I know, and I can only go back so far. After a while, I'm like, I don't want to go back too far. Fascinated by the 20th century and history and things like that. But it's fascinating that Dreyfuss seems to be into this, and I love how they discuss the JFK conspiracy. But Estevez is full in on it. He believes it. He's like, there was one shot coming from the school book depository, one coming from the grassy knoll, and Dreyfuss is like, also the Attorney General lied then.
Yeah, it's like Gerald Ford, he lied too. Like everybody's lying.
That's the conversations you have, and I love when Dreyfuss goes in, or when they're going, Estevez goes in, and he walks in, and he says, "You know what?" He says, "They're up to something in here." And he puts the binoculars on, and he looks out the window, and he turns back, and he goes, "I don't know what, but I'm going to find out."
Oh,
And
that's so good.
but just how calm Dreyfuss goes to him. "Do you want to know what it is?" And he's like, "Yeah, what is it?" But I like how the camera's angled. You only see the back of Estevez. You don't, and he's, yeah, you don't see, to be honest, no pun intended, you don't see it coming. And he does say to him, he says, "You want to know what it is?" And he's like, "Yeah, tell me what is it?" And he says, points to the mirror, and he turns around, and he's got the two big black marks around his eyes, and he's like, "Son of a bitch."
But he has to go out like that too, which is great.
But then they leave the dog turd in the fridge.
Oh. I mean, they had a good. I mean, who started it? Oh, they started it because with the toilet paper in the bathroom that has a gigantic hole in it.
Yeah, but the thing is that they mentioned when they're in, and again, I wanted to mention here about the angry captain.
Oh yeah, there it is, another classic '80s movie trope: angry black captain.
Yeah, I do know what, John. When I was watching it last night, and as I say, it's been a few years since I've watched this movie, so I can remember bits and pieces of it, but not exact scenes and stuff. But when they went in to speak to the captain, it crossed my mind right away what you said on our Beverly Hills Cop episode about, because I had said about, why the captain's always screaming and shouting, and you says that was kind of like a trope in these movies. And then as soon as they said you'd want to go in and see the captain, I thought to myself, "Oh, here we go." I thought exactly what you said about Beverly Hills Cop, and right enough, there he was. And I love just when they brought the other two guys in. One of them is Forrest Whitaker, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I was gonna say it took us almost an hour to bring up that Forrest Whitaker has a small bit part in this movie.
Yes, and when I looked up the cast before I watched it again, and I seen his name, and I was like, "Who is he in this movie?" I couldn't even remember him being in it. And then when I watched it, I went, "Oh, there he is." But the banter between them two sets of guys, like, this isn't a new thing from them and going on a stakeout and kind of playing these practical jokes on each other. This is something that's been happening for a long time between these two sets of cops, because you see them saying about, "Oh, like last time," and blah. I can't remember the exact comment what they were saying about each other, but you could see it flying back and forward.
And the captain's just sitting there. The chief's like, "Jesus, like these guys need this. Like, I'm gonna go now. I don't give a fuck what you guys do. Just go out there and do your job. You're doing it anyway, so figure it out between you guys."
Yeah, and he says, if there's any fuck ups, he says, "I'm gonna run your nuts through my shredder." And I like how Dreyfuss goes, "He doesn't have any nuts." But they all laugh, There's no kind of growling at each other. There's no seriousness. They know it's all just a bit of banter,
Yeah.
because like you said, they're doing a mundane task at this stage. They're not being allowed to be cops. They're not being allowed to do what they want to do.
No, they're stuck on a shitty job where they're really just supposed to sit there for. I'm guessing because it's 2 shifts, 12 hours apiece, and 12 hours on, 12 hours off. So these guys come and take over for you, and yeah, they just try to entertain each other, but they probably do just break each other's balls all day.
Yeah, yeah, and as I say, you mentioned the actual score of the movie, which I intently listened out for watching it again last night, and I thought, yeah, this is a pretty good '80s score. I really like this, but what I particularly like about the movie is the music, the songs in the movie.
Oh yeah, the soundtrack itself, it has to have that to be a classic buddy comedy of the 1980s.
And I love how when Dreyfuss decides to go back into the house and is reading the letters from the prison, and she comes back home, and he can't get out on time. He hides under the bed, and she goes to get into the shower, and Rhythm Is Gonna Get You comes on the she puts it on her record player, and instead of him, when she gets into the bathroom, into the shower, instead of him just getting the hell out of there, he decides to dance over to the bathroom, and he just stands watching her. I think that's absolutely brilliant.
I thought that was hysterical too. I love that. Like again, showing that he just, he's a little bit of a horn dog. The guy, he can't help himself.
Yeah, well, maybe that's why his marriage broke up. Maybe he wasn't getting any of it at home.
Yeah, that or he was unfaithful, one or the other.
Yep, exactly. But I really do want, Richard Dreyfuss, one of my favorite actors of all time. I don't think I've mentioned that.
No, never. You never brought it
I don't think I
up.
brought it up. I don't think I brought it, but like, everybody knows by now my favorite movie in Jaws. I love him as Matt Hooper, and I love him as Roy Neary, and then there's this, and I believe he's a cop. I really do. He's so good, and maybe one day we'll do another Stakeout because I really like another Stakeout. It's an underrated movie to me, an underrated sequel. Unfortunately, it didn't do too well, but he doesn't have the moustache in another
No.
Stakeout, and he's just not as good without the moustache.
No, he does look like a cop. He does like Emilio Estevez. You still see Emilio Estevez, whereas Richard Dreyfuss, I do see a cop, like the clothes he's wearing. He's wearing the
Yeah,
baseball hat a lot. Like I'm like, if I saw a regular Joe cop, which is what these guys are supposed to be, like it's not supposed to be a glamorous life, and they're showing you that in this movie. That's what Richard Dreyfuss looks like, is somebody who's not living a glamorous life.
yeah, you're 100% right. It's a part of the clothing as well is because of the time period. It's the 80s, but I love that the tight jeans with the shirt, the denim shirt or whatever, or the shirt he's wearing tucked in as well.
Mhm.
The trainers, and then the jacket. Don't know what kind of jacket he's wearing there, but just the wee jacket he's wearing as well. And as you say, he just reminds me of, like, not so much Miami Vice, but that I get that vibe, that 1980s cop, and I believe him. I really enjoy this character.
Yeah, I really love how he plays this character, and it's so different from all three characters you listed. They're all different from each other. Just shows how well of an actor Richard Dreyfuss is, and it's a shame because this movie really doesn't get brought up anymore, and it was
Yeah.
successful. That's why it got a sequel. It was the eighth highest grossing
Yep.
film of 1987, and just nobody talks about it anymore. I guess it's just one of those movies that a relic of the 80s.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, John, as well. Because it frustrates me as a Richard Dreyfuss fan that, as you said about Matt Hooper, one of the reasons, I'm not going to go into a big triad, by the way, about Jaws, but one of the reasons I think Jaws was so successful was that um, at that particular time, Richard Dreyfuss wasn't that well known. But them three guys were character actors. Robert Shaw lost himself behind Quint. That was not Robert Shaw. That was Quint. He didn't look like that. He didn't behave like that. Roy Scheider was brilliant as a cop. He played a cop before, but playing that sheriff in that movie, he was absolutely brilliant. But then Richard Dreyfuss, I believe he's an oceanographer. Do you know when I say I believe it, with the beard and the wee beanie hat and the long curly hair and the glasses? I look at him, I don't see Richard Dreyfuss, but he's such a great actor that he's Richard Dreyfuss as time goes on. Roy Neary, I loved him in that. And it frustrates me when people talk about Richard Dreyfuss. He's coming to London Comic Con, and they mention Star of Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But nobody ever mentions Stakeout. And even when I've seen Richard Dreyfuss interviewed, or they have him at other Comic Cons, nobody ever mentions Stakeout. And I think it's one of his best movies. I think it's one of his best performances. Well, I don't want to say it's one of his best performances because it's not a performance that's going to win him an Oscar, because he did win
No,
an Oscar
but
and he's
I
been
agree.
nominated.
I
Yeah,
agree though with you. I really feel like I would still put this in one of his top performances. I know that that's just the thing to do, but people do shun comedy like it's not something that's hard to do. And you
yeah,
can just see the range in Richard Dreyfuss that he can do a serious dramatic role that could win him an Academy Award, and then he could just bounce off Emilio Estevez and give another great performance. Because watching the movie, you said it early in the podcast, it's Richard Dreyfuss's movie, and he does a
yes,
great job carrying. Emilio was there to support him. Everyone's really there to support him. He gets the arc. He has the subtext, like you were talking about earlier with the alcoholic, and all of that going on. He's still hysterical, making you laugh in this movie
yeah,
because he's got the energy too. Like what you talked about
yeah.
earlier when he gives the way he does it. It's like so energetic and quick.
I just like I just like his look as well. He's just so cool. He's so relaxed. As like you said, he has the energy, but he's just so kind of just his look and everything. And like you said, there is it a relic of the 80s? I think, yeah, people forget about this movie because they probably just think of it as another 80s buddy cop movie. And we had the likes of Lethal Weapon come out in the same year. I'd be
Yeah,
interested to know
same
what
exact
month.
year.
Same year, and I crossed my mind because I wanted to bring it up. I was like, okay, so do you know when they talk about studios bringing out similar movies in the same year. They're like competing against each other. Like we mentioned in the last episode about, I mentioned Tombstone, but I didn't mention Wyatt Earp, which there's a lot of people love Wyatt Earp, but there's usually one movie that wins out, right? So this
1996, you got Independence Day and Mars Attacks. I prefer Mars Attacks, but nobody talks about Mars Attacks. They talk about Independence Day.
Yeah, so there's loads of movies like that where a studio would bring out the same type of movie, and one would be a winner and the other one, because of the box office or the popularity or whatever, the success of the movie. I feel as if Wyatt or Tombstone is more well known than Wyatt Earp. But is it because of Lethal Weapon that this movie then kind of gets forgot about?
I think that's a great theory, and I think that's probably it, because people still talk about Lethal Weapon to this very day. We've talked about it here, and that had the bigger director and Richard Donner. Not that this director isn't big; he was big for a time, but what did he do after this? I know everything he did before. He did like War Games. I think he did Did he do Saturday Night Fever?
He done Saturday Night Fever. I was actually reading about John Bottom. It was who dropped out of that project? Some big director dropped out of that project and he got it, and then it became a big hit. But yeah, I mean, John Bottom had some really good hits in the 80s. I mean, he had Short Circuit, as you mentioned there. What was the other one? War Games. The only thing was, he went on to do the sequel, another Stakeout, and that was a flop. I'm not too familiar with anything he done really after that. But the thing about Lethal Weapon 2 is that it had a rising star in Mel Gibson, even though he was a star already, but it made him an even bigger star. That then turned into a franchise. Lethal Weapon 2 was almost bigger than the original, and then became a franchise. And then Mel Gibson became a bit of a superstar. You know, he then went on to do Braveheart, and he directed it, and he won an Oscar, and it won Best Picture. Whereas Richard Dreyfuss, for me, this is Dreyfuss's. For me, I feel as if this is the last big Dreyfuss movie. I did watch Siskel and Ebert, as I said earlier, and they said that he's now this is a 1987 review. They said this is the third movie he's done in a year and a half, which is a lot for Dreyfuss, because I think he had personal problems in the early 80s and he wasn't making too many movies. I don't know what the movies he done in 87. I know he done Stand By Me. I think Always was the other one he done, the Spielberg movie.
I like Always, and I also like. I mean, it's Stand By Me. The thing with Stand By Me, and this is, we kind of touched on Richard Dreyfuss is he tells stories, and sometimes you just can't believe it. He said he doesn't remember being in Stand By Me.
Well, do you know, I seen something about this actually. I'll touch on it in a wee second, and I thought I must speak to John about it because he's mentioned this. But think about it, Dreyfuss, okay, big star in the 70s, American Graffiti, Goodbye Girl, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. 80s, he fizzled out for a while, and he came back with movies like Stakeout and Always. But again, he then goes into the 90s, and he doesn't. What does he do? He doesn't do too much. I know he was nominated for an Oscar in the mid to late 90s with it was a Mr. Holland's Opus. Opus.
And there's a movie, I think it's either late 80s, early 90s, that I personally really like, and I've seen the critical reviews of it, and people hate it. And I saw it like at a young age with my mom, and I always thought the movie was just like really sad. It's called Once Around, and Richard Dreyfuss. It's one of the earlier Richard Dreyfuss movies I remember seeing, and he looks like he's about 1,000 in the movie, because again, he just ate. He always just looked old. But I like him in that, but not a lot of other people did. So I guess like his career was kind of just on the decline, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's sad for me as a Richard Dreyfuss fan. And I forgot about What About Bob. He done What About Bob, which is a very good movie.
Oh, that's how do we forget that one? He's hysterical in that.
Yeah, and I think that was after Stakeout. That was like maybe 89 or 90 or maybe early 90s, and that was like. But you had Bill Murray in that, and Bill Murray makes a lot of that movie, whereas Dreyfuss is playing more of the straight role. I think that's the difference then maybe between the two franchises there, which is why Lethal Weapon is more thought of. It's endured more, and Stakeout is kind of a footnote of an 80s buddy cop movie. I remember somebody saying that I think it's on one of the Jaws documentaries, just talking about Dreyfuss, talking about you're saying about the comedic kind of timing he's got and touch he's got. Somebody described Dreyfuss's role in Jaws as one of the best comedic performances of the 70s.
I don't understand how you get that from him. I mean, he's got some funny lines in there, but I don't think that they're mainly supposed to be for comedy.
Yeah, but he does create levity. And actually, I have a movie here that I haven't watched it called The Big Fix with Richard Dreyfuss. Have you ever heard of it?
The Big Fix. I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, apparently it's good as well. And that's a comedy, and he plays a private detective.
Have you ever seen Always? Like, I know you're a Spielberg person.
No, that's one of the ones I haven't seen.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I wonder if you. I would like to hear your thoughts on it. It's very, very melodramatic, very schmaltzy. But I am always kind of been one of those person that will enjoy a schmaltzy movie every now and again. So I kind
Yeah,
of like it.
yeah. Listen, there's a handful of Spielberg '80s movies that I really need to get round to watching. That's one of them. I'm always, no pun intended, I'm always threatening to do it. Empire of the Sun, The Color Purple, and Always. And I know that Spielberg has said about Dreyfuss that he's his alter ego. When he casts Richard Dreyfuss in a movie, it's basically him.
I mean, they work well together. You can't deny that. And I think Richard Dreyfuss always kind of brings it for Spielberg. Speaking of Spielberg, we're getting kind of the end here. Sugarland Express got announced for a 4K, so I'll finally watch that one and check that one off my Spielberg list.
Brilliant. I think you'll enjoy that one. That talking about movies that get forgot about, that is a movie that gets forgot about in Spielberg's filmography, and I think
Yeah.
it's a very good movie.
I overlook it all the time, and that's one I don't know why. And I'm like, okay, there's the perfect excuse to finally watch it. I'll watch it on 4K, which is probably not how it was intended to be seen, but I'll watch it finally.
People always kind of talk about Spielberg. They always start with Jaws. Spielberg Jaws. You know what I mean? Jaws, Close Encounters, blah blah blah. And then Duel has this kind of cult following. People go, "Oh, have you seen Duel? Oh, yes, and that was a TV movie, but." I like Duel as well, but they never mentioned Sugarland, which was in between. And I think, I might say Sugarland's probably better than Duel. I don't know, but I mean, it's a very good '70s movie. I think the reason it gets forgot about is because it's the movie done directly before Jaws, and it wasn't a massive hit.
Yeah, that's always what I mean, and I feel like they do this a lot with a lot of directors. They don't acknowledge like the stuff they did before that really big hit. M. Night Shyamalan is the same thing. Everyone thinks The Sixth Sense. That's his first movie. No, he directed 2 movies before it. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
Christopher Nolan. People think Memento. No, he directed Following before Memento. People just kind of
yeah.
ignore those movies because they weren't hits.
Yeah, and I love that too. But I love having those movies there. Not that they have to be a secret, but I love having them there. It's kind of like because I am a Spielberg fan, and I'd be more a fan of his early part of his career than the latter part of his career. Okay, we'll say early part. I'm talking '70s, '80s, and '90s, right? Because the guy's been working in the business for over 50 years.
Him and
Um,
Scorsese will just die on a movie set. That's how it's gonna go.
Yeah, they'll end up putting Spielberg in maybe an Indiana Jones remake as one of the skeletons in the background.
He probably want that. Well, you see Clint Eastwood. You see Clint Eastwood still there with the headphones around his neck, out there directing. Looks like a
Yeah,
shriveled up old man. I'm like, it's cool to see that he's still doing it, but it's like, man, don't you want to retire?
yeah. That's probably the thing that's keeping him going. But
Yeah, that's true too. That's
yeah.
what gives him life, like some value to his life. Still, you need that as a human.
And Spielberg's parents only died in the last few years, so the chances are, I mean, as long as he's fit and healthy, touch wood, he could go for another 10, 15, 20 years. He's in his mid 70s. You never know. And look, it's not that. It's like I just don't find Spielberg's recent movies as appealing as his earlier stuff. And I know we all change with age, but the difference is that Eastwood could churn out movies in his '70s and '80s that were interesting to me, and I just don't feel as if Spielberg's doing that for me. But going back to what I was saying about his earlier work, it's almost I love being able to say to people who say they're Spielberg fans or or they love Jurassic Park or Indiana Jones or ET, and I say to them, "Have you seen Sugarland?" They're like, "What's that?" I'm kind of like you should watch that, or even Duel, even though Duel now in the last few years has kind of popped up as a kind of it's had a bit of a rediscovering from people I've noticed. But it is one of those ones you can go back and say, look, if you're a fan of Spielberg or you're a fan of filmmaking, a fan of how this man makes movies, look at those early ones, and you can see the seeds of Spielberg right there in his early 20s when he made those movies. Even the Columbo episode he directed.
Yeah, we were talking about that, like how he did Columbo also. Yeah, I mean, you could definitely see where Spielberg is coming from. I mean, his recent works, it's funny how you bring that up. I'm trying to think about it. The Fablemans was pretty good. I didn't care for West Side Story. He's just a different director now. I like Bridge of Spies. I don't know if you saw
Yeah,
that.
I did. I seen it on the television a few years ago, but it's one of those ones I maybe have to go back and revisit. Look, listen, them type of movies, I know West Side. I always keep an eye. I think West Side Story was a flop. I know that he always wanted to do a musical, and I don't know why he picked that, but he did. People said it didn't need remade. He thought it needed updated, um, but what I'm saying is that a lot of his movies are always recent movies are always critically acclaimed, and most of them do fairly well at the box office. They just have something about it. I know he's an older man now, but there's a bit of magic. It's just been lost there. Um,
No, I
I think.
agree with you. But it's also the modern movie problem we have now. Like, it's just, regardless, he's still Spielberg, but I'm sure he's not working in the same environments he was working on. Like when we've done Raiders of the Lost Ark, you see him there, sick as a dog, sweating, and the whole cast. I'm sure he's in controlled environments now, and maybe you
Yeah,
lose a little bit of that magic.
yeah, maybe so, but we've seen. Well, I suppose that happens to them all. Hitchcock wasn't as good in the later part of his career as he was
Mhm.
for the most part of his career. But to me, Hitchcock was a real innovator of cinema. He propelled it forward. He moved it forward from the silent era to the talkies to the color. And even when color was there, he done an experiment like Psycho, but I actually feel as if cinema kind of left him behind. By the time he got to the 70s, he still made good movies, but there you had people coming through like Scorsese, like Spielberg, like Coppola, and they were becoming even more hard-edged, and they were pushing more realistic cinema. Hitchcock always liked the controlled environment, and I feel as if that Spielberg could still do something in a controlled environment that's a wee bit more interesting than what he's doing. But that's just me personally, what I feel about it,
Yeah.
about his later stuff.
It's hard to say, like, most guys might not even make movies anymore, and he's still doing it, and the amount of movies he's turned out. It's always crazy to look at a guy like Spielberg, who's put out, I don't know what the total is. Then you look at a guy like Stanley Kubrick, who's made what, like 10 movies in his entire career, from like the 50s all the way through 1999 when he died. Just different perspective from different directors. It's fascinating how that works.
Yeah, I mean, it must be nice to have the luxury, to have
Yeah,
time.
right.
The thing I look at is like, I always hear people say, like filmmakers and stuff, say directors say making a movie's tough. It's never easy, and the thing is with people like Spielberg and Cameron even said this to Spielberg as well. He says what astonishes me about Spielberg is the amount of movies he can put out. The volume of movies he's put out over the years. Not just the quality, but the volume. But the one thing to me that struck me about Kubrick was that he took his time, and if we all had luxury and time, then you can prepare better. I don't know. I find that a bit. What's the word I'm looking for? I can't even think of the word, John. I just find it a bit self obsessed to take all that time to do one thing, rather than just getting stuck in and getting it put out there,
Yeah.
and using the tools at your disposal. Look, in the end, he couldn't even make AI because he ended up dying. Spielberg had to come in and do it for him. He took that long.
Yeah, it's crazy with that, I never thought of it from that angle. Like, he did have the luxury of time. He never really had to worry about it. James Cameron's another one where, you look at his early part of his career and he's just pumping out movies. He did Piranha 2, Terminator. What did he do after that? He did Aliens, The Abyss,
Aliens.
True
Yep.
Lies, Terminator 2, all this before 94. Then 97 rolls around, he does Titanic. 1997, almost 30 years ago, he does Titanic. Since then, we've gotten 2 movies.
Yeah. But I think that's because his kind of focus has shifted on what he wants to do. Yeah, to me, he's more of an. If somebody said to you, "Who's James Cameron?" you would say he's a filmmaker. But if you ask James Cameron, he'd probably say, "I'm an explorer." The filmmaker, he's more shifting the explorer side of things.
Yeah, that's true too. And I mean, you got other directors like Tarantino who, like, he waits like 3 or 4 years to put out a movie, and then he also likes to do the novelization. So it's like he spends time like on one movie, and he can do that too, where he knows people will just come see it because it's a Tarantino movie. I don't have to rush.
Yeah, and I was actually speaking to my dad about Tarantino recently because I seen Tarantino in an interview, and he was being asked, oh, you're going to do one more movie, but you're still young, you've got plenty of years left, and Tarantino's mantra always was get out while you're on top. But my dad said the same thing. Maybe he just wants to get out while he's on top, and I said yeah, because people think when you're a filmmaker, that's all you are. That's all you want to do is make movies, and it's not always the case. And I know that Tarantino's talked about he wants to do novelizations. He wants to write a book. He wants to write a novel. He's wrote a couple of books. He wrote a novelization
He likes
of.
TV too. He likes to do like those like procedurals. He just likes those kinds of shows. Like they're like Columbo in a sense where, it's just like doing a bunch of episodes of a show.
Yeah, and he said that he wants to do stage work. So I can understand if you've been doing even though his Pison's movie film, you know, he says he's going to do 10. Who's to say when he does the 10, he may rock up in 5 years' time and say, oh, after that, after the fact, and say, I'm going to do another because I want to, because he gets the bug or he sees a story and goes, I really want to tell that story. Or he gets a script and goes, all right, well, I know he writes his own, but you know what I mean? He maybe sits down and writes a script one night and goes, I want to make that movie. And the studios will be falling over themselves to let him make it, kind of like what Kubrick was doing in his career. I understand that, from an artist point of view. I understand you want to put out your masterpieces, but there's other people like I think Spielberg that have to have those creative juices flowing. Like I said before, I bet you Spielberg goes to sleep thinking about movies and he wakes up thinking about movies. That's all that man does. By the time he's even finished his last movie, he's probably thinking about the next one.
Yeah, well, that's like what's his name, Wes Anderson's that same exact way. He missed the premiere of one of his own movies because he was making his next movie. So he's just like he finishes a movie and then that's it. He's like, I don't care. I just like making movies, so I'm on to the next movie. Just I guess different perspectives from different directors. Like they just want to keep creating. Spielberg seems like that. Others kind of want to like, okay, I finished that. I'm gonna take a break, regroup for a while, then I'll
Yeah,
start the next one.
yeah. I do know what we sit here and we talk about the high profile ones. Do you know what I mean? Will we ever see another Spielberg again? You know what I mean? In our lifetime, um, will we see another Scorsese? Will we see another Tarantino? Probably not. Probably not. So we're talking about high profile ones here, specific personalities. But there's an awful lot of directors out there that just get paid to make a movie and then move on to the next movie because they're getting paid.
Yeah.
They don't have the luxury. They just have to do it. They're hired to make a movie.
Well, a perfect example could be like just to circle back to and end this show is Stakeout, the director who directed this. Like if you look at his filmography, it's all over the place, and it's not a director who you'd be like, oh, he's an auteur. You can always pull his movie out of a crowd and know who made it. No, not necessarily. So it feels more like a director who, got lucky, made this movie, and probably need to get some backing from the studios. More of a studio release film.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm saying as well. Just as I say, going back to this movie too, um, is I wanted to touch on it because we touched on the soundtrack earlier. One of my favorite parts of the movie is the ending. When everything's all sewed up, and in classic, as I've mentioned before, storytelling. He gets the girl. The captain says to him, there's, we've heard that you have had a relationship with this girl, and he's like, no, not me. I'm just making sure she's okay. And then he says he sees that he kisses her, and he shakes the head and puts it down. But then the music starts, Mister,
Yeah.
is it love? And it's classic. It's classic 80s end, and I just love how the camera kind of pans up and just surveys the whole scene, the police cars and the lights, and you can see it's like nighttime, and the music's playing, and the titles just start to roll, and they just keep the cameras rolling for a minute.
I wrote that note down too. That's classic 1980s for you. Is that exact thing? Exactly. Pan
Yeah,
out, show the whole scene. People are still walking around, and then we'll have the credits just roll over this. I'm like, and the music is playing. I'm like, that's just a
yeah.
classic 1980s ending. It's cliche, but you know what? Works every time.
I love it, and then it just fades to black, and then I can just sit and just listen to the rest of the song, and it just makes you feel good. It's a feel good movie. And
It's just one of those kinds of movies we just don't get anymore.
yeah, I was going to say that. I didn't want to say it because I think I've said it a few times before. I know what I mean? So I'm glad you said it, John. As I say, and I totally agree with you. You just don't get it like these type of movies anymore.
No, there'll be too many messages in the movie, too many themes, too many things we have to linger on and like to flesh out the characters a little bit more. Where at its heart, you have those moments you could look for it. We hopefully fleshed them out here on the show to let you guys know, but it's a lighthearted buddy cop comedy that you're supposed to watch from the 1980s and just have a good time watching.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. As I say, and that's what I was saying here. I'd put down in my notes here just to close out on it. Is that I just think it's well paced, well acted. It's very funny, and Dreyfuss and Estevez have a great chemistry. And Dreyfuss's performance is top class. His relationship with Maria is great, and the soundtrack is amazing as well.
I couldn't agree more. That's the perfect way to describe this movie. And, we're glad you guys were with us today. We hope you enjoyed us breaking down Stakeout. And you know what? We're going to be leaving Emilio Estevez in Estevez September. And we're going to be heading into spooky season. And what are we reviewing next, David?
Well, we're going to, as you say, John, we're going into spooky season. So we're just going to bounce off the back of a comedy before we go into an absolute nightmare. And where me and John are going to be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep. One of the best 1980s horror movies, celebrating 40 years this year, if you can believe that one. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to doing that.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. One of my favorite horror movies of all time.
Me too. That's in my top 3 all time, so I can't, or top 5. I gotta look and see my list. It might be slightly, maybe it's 4 now, but either way, it's one I watch every single year. It's the first horror movie I ever watched, so I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one as well, John. It is definitely in my top 5, top 3 possibly. It all depends what you consider a horror movie. Do you know what I mean? Because the first, yeah, but it's definitely up there for me. It's one of my favorites of all time.
Yep. So we'll see you guys on the next one where we'll be reviewing A Nightmare on Elm Street. So make sure you guys check that one out. Like, share, and subscribe, and tell your friends about us. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, but it is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. So in every single video that we do here on the channel on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you got to do is answer one of those questions in the comment section below. And as long as you do that, you come back to Tuesday's video where we'll put your name on our magic wheel. We'll spin that bad boy 2 times. The 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And me and David just got done talking about one of the most underrated 80s buddy cop films. So I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite buddy comedy film? That's buddy comedy, not just buddy cop films. And what is the most underrated film of the 1980s in your opinion? So make sure you guys leave those answers in the comment section below. And also on Tuesday, if you are a channel member, like a friend of the channel or a producer for the channel like John Doe Juggalo and Jason Martin, or a channel director like Frank from Frank's Media Reviews and Mr. Smelly Potato, every single month, we put your name on a magic wheel. We spin that wheel 1 time. The name it lands on, they have their choice of one of these 4K Blu-rays that you see right here. So what do I got? I got Thor Love and Thunder on 4K Steelbook, 2012 on 4K Blu-ray, The Core on 4K Blu-ray, Super 8 on 4K Blu-ray, The Lost Boys, an 80s classic on 4K Blu-ray, and last but not least, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure on 4K Blu-ray. So if you are a channel member, your name will be put on the wheel, and when it lands on your name, you will be this month's winner. And you guys can look for all that information in the description below, so make sure you guys all come back to Tuesday's video if you enter one of these giveaways. And for everyone else, thanks for checking out this video. We really hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.